let's get into our spoiler review. Spoiler warning. This is a spoiler warning. We are talking spoilers for episode 1 of Loki.
Bye. If you haven't seen the episode, we don't want to ruin it for you unless you're okay with that.
If you want us to spoil, then stay. If you don't, we'll see you next week. Let's get into the review. So, all right.
Now we can talk about the real stuff.
We can talk about the real stuff now. I loved this episode for so many reasons. I'll list off a few and just real quick. Then I'll have you give your thoughts, and then we'll dive deep into some of these specific aspects. So
yeah,
just to list off a few things that I really, really enjoyed. Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston's chemistry is absolutely fantastic. I could not wish for another dynamic detective duo like these two. Love that. I love the DB Cooper gag. I think it was executed to perfection.
Fantastic.
I love the fact that it was a bet that he had with Thor and Heimdall. Absolutely brilliant. I love the second half of the projector room, because the first half he doesn't believe it. I do love that conversation, but that's not my favorite. My favorite is the second part where he comes back in by himself and watches his tape. That is brilliant character development, brilliant storytelling, and just fantastic acting work from Tom Hiddleston. Just brilliant. Great cliffhanger, great story development. Overall, just in my quick thoughts, so well done. Just absolutely brilliant. The world building, everything is great. I love this episode. Sasha, I'm going to throw it over to you. What are your thoughts on this episode?
I mean, I loved everything about this episode. I just spewed my guts of how much I love this episode, but getting into specifics, I think 3 of my favorite moments from this episode are things that happen in that room. I think there's 3 parts to that scene or that room that I think are particularly important. When Loki's first in there, he's in denial. This isn't real. I'm so powerful. He's still going on his 2012 Loki spiel as we expected him to. The second time he comes in after he's escaped and he's by himself, that's when we get the real power progression. Because at that point, he has already realized how powerful the TVA is and almost shifted his sights from maybe I should give up this control of Midgard or Earth and maybe my sights should be on this. That wasn't explicitly stated in the episode, but I'm sure that's what he's thinking, just knowing who he is as character. But then seeing in a matter of minutes, like someone said earlier, what we've seen in 5 years. His mother die, his father accept him as his son, die, and then himself die. And see that the guy that he thought he was being a crony for gets all the Infinity Stones, and Loki just, any of his pursuits are fruitless. That was brilliant because it caught the character up to speed with where the audience is. We don't have to spend this time being like, okay, when is 2012 Loki gonna give up this, power thing? And then that just got us to the meat and potatoes of the episode. And then the third time, it directly follows that, but I feel like there's a distinct cut once it says file has ended and Mobius comes back in and they have that chat where Loki is basically like, I do it to invoke fear in people because I am a weak person. I don't enjoy killing people. I just see it as a necessary means, and I'm not opposed to doing it. And I think that's where we see those 3 steps are bam, 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 get us to where we need to be with the character. Like I said, I like the rule of 3s. I think it's very good. You have his denial, his realization, and then acceptance. And I think that's really strong for his work as a character. I would go as far to say, as we've done more with this character than maybe we've ever seen in the MCU so far with him, and potentially more than we have with any other character, just because Wanda was good at the beginning of WandaVision. She gets a little bit more powers, but she's still good at the end. Sam Wilson is good at the beginning of Falcon Winter Soldier. He just gets elevated to Captain America. With this, we have done some quick character work, and I really love that. And then the last thing I was going to say, just because I feel like this will go into the next thing, I personally really liked the Infinity Stones as how shocking that is for an audience who spent the last 23 films being Infinity Stones, and then they're in a drawer. Just of the just sheer shock of it. I think that was a great visual, a great piece, both for the character and for us as an audience to show us who we're dealing with here. I really liked it, but I know you have differing opinions, so Jack.
Yeah, so before I get into that one line, I'm going to harken back real quick to what you just kind of covered really brilliantly about Loki and his character development. This was a big problem that I saw could potentially arise that I was a little bit worried about. I had seen people on Twitter and on social media saying, okay, this is cool, but how are you going to take 2012 Loki, who is dead set on ruling the world, and how are you going to turn him? And is it going to be rushed, and is it going to be too quick? That was something I was legitimately worried about, but I think the way they did it hit the nail on the head. Absolutely fantastic. I love what they did.
Because the only thing he wants more than power is to not die. You know what I mean? So, like, showing him that he's gonna die and everyone he loves is gonna die, that's the only way to, like, get his head right.
Yeah, and he always says, he's like, I'm a god. You know, I'm immortal. Like, he's saying that because, and he's not saying that to invoke fear. He's saying that to, like, remind himself and, like, you know, keep himself, like, I'm a god, I'm immortal, like, I'm good, we're good here. But in reality, as we've learned in the MCU, just because you're immortal, you can still die. Like, you can still die. So that's something I really, really loved about that, is that they took that problem that could have arose, they squashed it, and they did it the right way, which I really enjoyed. But yes, some of our guys use them as paperweights. So what you're telling me is that Gamora sacrifices herself. Black Widow sacrifices herself.
Didn't think about it this way.
You're telling me that Tony Stark makes the ultimate sacrifice and dies wielding these powerful stones. You're telling me that many, many people died and were sentenced to terrible things because of these stones. But for the TVA, oh, our guys just use them as paperweights. You're taking the most powerful things that we have been obsessed with for the last 11 years, and you minimize them to paperweights.
I can see where you're getting at. I can see where you're going.
Is brutal. Now, that may be me, as the Tony Stark stan that I am, a little salty because my guy died because he obviously, as a mortal human being, could not handle the power of the Infinity Stones. But for someone, that line, it's that one line. You could have showed the Infinity Stones, and that would have been like, oh my god, you know, like that would have been shocking. And then just said, yeah, we get these a lot because variants have them, like their power, they take, and we have to take them from them. But no, you downplay it and say, oh, our guys use them as paperweights, blah, 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 blah. Bro, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What is that? I don't like that. I didn't like that. That was maybe the one thing that I did not like about this episode. Like, legitimately.
I think I see now what you mean with those have been important, and now that we're being told, they're not really.
They're worthless.
I think the only thing that in my head why it doesn't bother me as much, obviously everyone's entitled to their own opinion, totally fine. I think for me, it's the idea that the sacred timeline is sacred, and it operates on this like fate or destiny or inevitability, whatever you want to call it, idea that certain things are supposed to happen, certain things, people are supposed to die, certain bad things are supposed to happen so that certain other things can happen. And ultimately, to me, like, I get it if, like, I don't know, it doesn't bother me as much because I think the only way to end Endgame was for Tony Stark to snap his fingers, say, I am Iron Man, save the whole world. Like, that is the only thing. End it where you started it, with Tony Stark. So to me, I get that's that sort of thing, but I agree. I can see where that line is a little bit more controversial of, like, we're about to get a movie from a character who jumped off a cliff for one of those things, you know? Yeah. So I can see that. But I do think it's a very powerful visual in the sense that it's telling us we're done with the Infinity Saga almost. Like, there are beings that you are now spending time with as an audience who absolutely 100% can disable these things to be paperweights. And I think I understand what you're saying of that line being that way, but I also feel like it's supposed to be just as much of a shock to Loki because he then sees himself get killed for one. He knows how much he's done for just the Tesseract in 2 movies. at that point in the timeline. So I like the visual of being like, these things are in a drawer. There's other things to be worried about or be concerned with going forward in the MCU, not the Infinity Stones. Plus, I would have wondered for a while if we never saw them. Like, okay, so those things are just floating around out there. Like, what's going on? Especially if we're dealing with different timelines. But I can see where you're coming from with that line.
Yeah, and the other thing that kind of, I'm more okay with it than the Infinity Stone, because I feel like that was blatant and didn't need to be there, is this whole argument about destiny, free will, or this is just how it's supposed to happen. Because now it kind of feels like, oh, and look, I'm still in the thing of Tony Stark made that decision. That's what it was. And that just happens to be how the sacred timeline it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I did have some people in my comments today say, hey, this kind of just makes that all meaningless. Tony Stark, this wasn't his choice. It was just the choice of the timekeepers, basically. I don't think that's 100% true. I just think that those events, they were always going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't necessarily mean minimize what Tony Stark did or what the Avengers did. All it does is just say, yes, it happened. Tony Stark made the decision to sacrifice himself. That happened. It was supposed to happen. And I wanted to bring this up also for some people because I had another comment about this as well. Someone said that they didn't like how it didn't make any sense how the Avengers are able to go back in time in Endgame, screw with the timeline, kind of do all of that. And I just want to put this out there so that rebut that and kind of just tell you guys kind of the thought to that. In the episode, this is literally a line in the episode, so maybe if you guys didn't hear it or not, I'm going to tell you right now. Loki says, he's like, okay, well, what about because they're saying that Loki did something wrong, he bust off the timeline. So Loki's like, okay, well, but what about the Avengers? Like, did they just went back in time? They just screwed stuff. Like, what about the Avengers? And the judge says that was supposed to happen in the sacred timeline. The Avengers going back in time was set by the timekeepers. That was supposed to happen. So that explains why it does, because Steve Rogers was always going to go back and return the stones to where they were, not make any branch realities. That's how it was supposed to happen on the sacred timeline. So I just wanted to clarify that for some people, because I saw a comment about that today, just saying, hey, that doesn't make any sense. Why could the Avengers go back and Loki can't? Because on the sacred timeline, that was supposed to happen. Because do you remember, if you go back in Endgame to 2012, when Hulk smashes Tony Stark and the Tesseract goes away, that's not part of the plan.
Yeah.
That's not part of the plan. So that's why when Loki takes it and goes, that wasn't supposed to happen in the sacred timeline. So I just kind of wanted to clear that up. So
yeah, I think too with that, it's like, if you think about, I'm a very visual person, so I liked Owen Wilson's like machine that showed them how close they were to multiverse, or like how far the timelines were branching in certain areas. I think that's probably one of those things where it's like, maybe the Avengers branch is so minimal and they know that that's supposed to happen anyways, that maybe it's like, okay, because the branch that what is Tilda Swinton's character's name? The predecessor to Doctor Strange.
The ancient one.
Yes, the ancient one. So when she does that like thing and explains to Banner, Hulk, this is what the timelines are like. If you pluck an Infinity Stone, like it's gonna branch off. Like by returning them, they already fixed the timeline, so it's already a closed loop. So I feel like that's I get that people want to pick these things apart. Like I like to do that too. Make sure stuff adds up. But I think this one's pretty clean. I think that all makes sense. I think you did a great job of explaining it.
Yeah, I would argue on their pad that shows them they didn't even get a branch, because
probably
what they did is they went back to the exact second when they took the stone. So if you're on that date, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed, because Steve Rogers afterwards goes back to the exact millisecond and puts the stone back. So they probably didn't even know. It just in and out, if that makes any sense. So
yeah,
I want to get more in depth about the projector room, or whatever we want to call it. I want to get more in depth about that. I want to get more in depth about the conversation he has with Owen Wilson. Not necessarily the first one. The first one's just kind of funny, like, hey, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. But I want to get into the two, the meat and potatoes. The one scene where Loki is by himself and the scene where Mobius comes back in. And we talked about it a little bit, but I really want to break it down. This is specifically, this is the best scene of the show. The one where Loki is by himself is the best scene of the show.
Absolutely.
Of this episode. And I already touched on it a little bit, but this is brilliant character development. You get to see a villain who was almighty, all-powerful, thought he could do nothing wrong, truly get broken down. Watching the look on his face when he watches his mom die is heartbreaking. Watching when he's sitting there with Academy Award winner Anthony Hopkins and he fades away, like, he broke down. That is brilliant acting by Tom Hiddleston, and I love everything about that scene. What do you think, Sasha?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people, I don't know how many people know this, I'm pretty sure Tom Hiddleston is like very theatrically trained. Like he knows what he's doing with acting, and I think the fact that maybe his performances haven't been all that like memorable in other stuff is because he's playing the character so well. He's being the proper side character. But this moment like allowed us to see really what his acting chops are, but more importantly with Loki as a character, like we've never seen him in that state. Even when he's in his disheveled state in Thor the Dark World, when he's in prison, what should have happened in the sacred timeline, when he's put in prison and he's like starved and pale and whatever, like he is still in control in those scenes. This scene is the first time we have ever seen this character not in control. Even when Thanos kills him, he's saying, "You will never be a god." Like, he's making claims and powerful statements and trying to trick him. Like, this is the first time we've ever seen this character break. And I think getting to know that the rest of the series will explore how he rebuilds himself in that second scene and then going forward is going to be super exciting. But yeah, that was for sure the scene of the episode. And then the fact that like you even get the finality of the final, like the file is ended, like it's over, and you see the thing come off the film come off the reel, and like, you know, like, okay, that has some finality to it that's pretty powerful. And he even gets up from the chair he's in and goes and sits on the floor, which is pretty defeatist. And like, I don't know, I loved it. I love that people are getting to see. I think the one thing I've loved about Loki since Thor is that he as a character is incredibly broken. He comes from all of his want for control and power is, I think, to prove to his parents that he belongs, or to the world or the universe or whatever, that like he is powerful, he can like make a name for himself basically, because he's not Odin's son, he's not truly Thor's brother, he's lived in his shadow, and like he wants to make a name for himself, and he goes about that in the mischievous, evil ways that he does. But he has always been just like a broken character who wants a sense of belonging, and he seeks that in power and control. But now he's realizing that nothing he does, no matter how powerful he becomes, and the events that he now accepts as being inevitable events, like there's nothing he's going to be able to do to protect his mother, who he loves most in the world. His father will eventually accept him, and then he's going to die. So like none of these things he wants, this belonging from his father, power, whatever, is ever going to come to pass. And I think that is all just packed in that little scene of one man reacting to probably a green screen at the time. Incredible.
It's the best. It's the best moment in that episode by far. All right, I want to transition a little more lighthearted. We gotta talk about Owen Wilson.
Oh my gosh.
We gotta talk about Owen Wilson. The best. Now in one episode, I couldn't see anyone else cast in that role.
No.
I mean, he brings, because it's a very, I know it sounds weird, but I'll explain. This is a very subtle performance.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is, you know, you think Owen Wilson's gonna come in, he's gonna be all quirky and funny and you know, like jokes, you know, Wes Anderson kind of quirky like he usually is. You get a little bit of that, but it's not so forefront. It's also serious. You can tell with his, you know, with some of the conversation he had, he's trusted in the TVA, but he wants to really prove himself and kind of gain some recognition for all that he's done for the TVA. And for him to stick his neck out for Loki is just, it says a lot, because he's like, no one else is going to accept him. This variant Loki is going to die. I think he can help us. I see the potential. I want him to stay and be here. So I really like that. And then just the chemistry with him and Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah.
It's just, you don't think it'll work, but it 100% works.
Someone mentioned in the chat, Scott Clunas said, Hiddleston and Wilson's characters from Midnight in Paris are variants from another universe. Changed my mind. I have not seen Midnight in Paris, but apparently they're both in that. So I wonder if like having that already like real life performed together situation has helped this. I mean, regardless of whether it's just them and their talent as actors or whether it's they have a friendship or whatever, they're phenomenal. I agree. Like, I think, sorry to Sam and Bucky, but they're the best duo in the MCU currently. I really love them. I think it's perfect. And I totally agree with you. Owen Wilson, this is where I think people, like, I always think of Owen Wilson as like him and Vince Vaughn in a buddy comedy. Like, that's who Owen Wilson is. But I think seeing him in this role, it's like, no. He's not just Wes Anderson quirky. He's not just funny guy. He knows comedy so well that he can balance it and like turn it on and off when he needs to. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's all about the comedic timing, because he doesn't do anything so boisterous or outrageous. It's like the little things that he'll say. He'll be serious and then he'll like do like a little thing. He's like, but you love to talk. You're like it's the way that he delivers it. It's not a big bombastic performance. It is a very subtle comedic performance. And I love that, because he's just like so amazed by Loki. He's like, oh my God, you're Loki. I'm a huge fan, like all this stuff. And I just, it is kind of quirky, but in a different way. It's not the normal Wes Anderson. It's not like the normal Wes Anderson, Owen Wilson quirky. It is a different level. And I really love that. And it works so well, because you can tell that he has, I don't want to say the power, but he kind of does. He has the power over Loki, because Loki is a prisoner of the TVA. Owen Wilson is the guy that's here to help him out.
But he knows even as a character to play that like to his advantage in ways that doesn't like piss Loki off, but really like, you know, he's playing the role of Mobius, downplaying his importance in the TVA to Loki. That's insane.
And it's also the God, I had it on the tip of my tongue. What was I gonna say? Crap, I forgot. I had it.
Sorry, I totally cut you off.
No, it's not you. That was a great point that you made. But it's really what it really comes down to is just, it's like I said, it's the delivery. But yeah, I mean, the chemistry just works well. He has the power over him, and no, I remember what I was gonna say. So you had said, you know, he acts like he's kind of lower down on the TVA, but he also knows the power that he has, and he knows how to toe the line. He's never going to say anything that's truly going to piss off Loki. He delivers it in a way that is, no, I'm not here to piss you off. I'm amazed at what you are, what you do. And it feels authentic. It feels like he truly means what he's saying, which then comes off as funny, because some of the things that he's saying in amazement are just funny lines.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I love about it. It all comes down to the delivery. It all comes down to the authenticity, literally, of the lines that are said. And with that, the way he delivers those lines makes it authentic, but also makes it quirky and funny. So I really love that. A few more technical things from my part. I think the direction overall is fantastic. The cinematography is incredible.
Beautiful.
Absolutely incredible. Literally, the scene that we're just talking about Loki watching, when they get extra close up on his face and just watch like his eyes literally like go from dry to water up, I'm like, that's incredible. I mean, the cinematography in the MCU, I think, is undefeated. I think the MCU cinematography in general is highly underrated. I mean, literally, just the scene from Endgame where you have Captain America sitting and you got all of Thanos' army. I like that shot. Is iconic. You should put that thing up in the Louvre. I'm not joking.
Yeah.
The cinematography of the MCU is incredible, and it is again here with Loki. It's just fantastic.
I think people are really only starting to talk about it in the sense of like Eternals, and I think what people don't understand is like, so that scene specifically with Steve Rogers, like that is like you can get in whatever arguments you want about CGI or whatever the movie's like half constructed, but I'm like, that's still a piece of art. Like in art, cinematography is just composition of the way the medium you choose, what you choose, where you choose to put things on the canvas or the paper or whatever, and that's all it is in film. And I think you're getting very stylistic versions of this in the TV shows and probably in Eternals, but it's always been there, and that's always been an important part of the MCU. It's always been a visual storytelling franchise. So I'm glad at least now it's getting the recognition, and I really do hope these shows give people renewed appreciation for some of the older stuff, because they'll be more dialed into it.
Absolutely. And you know, the next point I want to hit on as well is the world building. I think the world building in just episode 1 is just incredible.
I'm really shocked with how much they were able to accomplish in this episode, just because I didn't feel like we got this with either of the other 2 shows. So not that they couldn't do it, but it seemed to take them more time in the other shows, whereas here, geez, like right off the bat,
you're just showing like a propaganda cartoon infomercial, and you know everything. And it works. It doesn't feel like it's too rushed. It doesn't feel like anything like that. It just works. And I really enjoyed that. I thought that was very, very well done. I think if they didn't do this episode perfectly, the character development of Loki could have felt extremely rushed.
Yeah.
The world building could have felt extremely rushed. But I don't know what it was about the delivery of both of those things, but it was just done so good that you are caught up. You're up to date. It didn't feel rushed at all. I mean, do you agree? I don't know. Like,
yeah, no, and I mean, I feel like even saying, oh, we're up to date, or Loki as a character is up to date, kind of even undermines what this episode was able to accomplish, because it wasn't just, okay, here's where we are, next episode we'll get into stuff, right? It was like new information, catching you up to speed, teaching you about this thing that has supposedly existed forever, and in addition to that, giving you a feel of like new content, you know where stuff is going. I don't like to use the word perfect, because everything can always be improved, but like this is pretty damn close, because it's just everything, the impeccable amount of detail to every aspect of this TV show is so tangible. I also love, and you tell me if you notice this, Jack, how this world feels very lived in. Like it feels like a really old 1970s DMV that might be in space, but like, you know, like I don't know, it had the setting of the TVA itself was like kind of a character within the episode. And like even just the wood carvings in the courtroom, it felt like lived in. It didn't feel like it was like, oh, there's this brand new shiny thing. No,
it doesn't feel new. It feels like it's been there since the beginning of time. You can believe that. It's very authentic, and I like that, because you could make it look all new and fresh, like S.H.I.E.L.D., like in WandaVision.
Or Sword, yeah.
Sword, Sword. In WandaVision, it's new, it's fresh, it's sleek.
Modern.
But no, this feels like there are coffee stains on the desks, and people have been here for a long time. Like, you feel that, and I like that. That's
people retire from this place. Like, this is a career job, you know? Like, I love that.
Yeah, and it's not like fish out of water. Well, it's fish out of water for Loki, but it's not for the others. It's not like we have no idea what's going on. This brand new for us. The people there, they're like, yeah, we've been doing this forever, literally. Forever.
This is a 9 to 5 for us. Like,
yeah, like the guard, like the guards. That one lady, I don't know what her name is, but she's like a badass. Like that one guard, and then Mobius, even he's been like, I've been here forever. Like, you know, like it's not new to them. This is their everyday. Like, this is what they do. I really like it. That's a good point that I didn't really think about, but that really is true. And I completely agree with that. I think that that's really, really well done. And
her name is Hunter B15 is her character name.
Okay, Hunter B15 is a badass, I would say.
She is.
She's a badass.
I also loved the judge.
Yes. I think she can have a bigger role. I think she is.
I agree.
I think she knows more than I think she's letting on. I think. So we'll see. But what was I going to say? Um, I don't know. Before we finish out this review, I want to give final thoughts. Sasha, your final thoughts. What did you like? What did you not like about this episode? Episode number 1.
I genuinely, like, I would be lying if I said there was anything I didn't like about this episode. If I rewatch it and I feel differently, I will comment on this live stream and to let the people know or talk about it next week. But I genuinely can't think of anything I didn't like about this. I mean, I think about this with the Marvel TV shows, and I don't know why this is the way I like justify them in my mind, but I think to myself, if the series were to end here, or this was all I was to get for this character, or like this is what I paid $10 a month for Disney Plus or whatever I pay for it, like I would be happy with this episode. Like that sounds so dumb, but like if this was all I got for Loki, I don't know. I feel super satisfied with what this episode is. I can't wait for the future. I really have full trust in this series, and where it's going, and I can't wait to be in this world more. Because I feel like we'll be in and out of the TVA in the next couple episodes, but I love the world. I love the characters. Everything that should be good and established in the first episode of a TV show has been for me, and I'm so excited to go forward with it.
Yeah, I think I pretty much did. My final thoughts echo pretty much everything that Sasha says, besides a few little things.
Yeah.
The screaming Infinity Stone is a paperweight line. Besides that, I mean, it's solid. I think the performances are fantastic. The cinematography, like I talked about, is great. I think this is some of the best character development and story built a world building that we've had in any of the TV shows in the first episode. I think they did that really well. The pacing was fantastic. I think the pacing of this show might be flawless so far, at least. We'll see how it continues, but I loved it. I'm very excited to see the next. Well, okay, I've already seen the next episode. But I'm very excited. Knowing what happens in episode 2, I'm very excited to see episode 3. I'm very excited to see the rest of the series. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. And that is the end of the review, guys. Before we get into, we're gonna take your guys' chats right now. Before we get into that, again, I'm just gonna throw this out there. We're pushing my subbing to the channel here today.
Guys, it's a big red button right there.
Trying to get to 700 subscribers. It's a big red button. It's not too far away. We're less than 20 away. We're 19 away. I want to get to 700. I've been pushing it for the last, I don't know, about a month and a half or so. If you guys have not already, please consider dropping a sub. It means the world. But
you won't regret it, guys. I promise you.
Thank you so much.
As a long time being a couple months subscriber, never once has Jack disappointed me. So I think I can vouch and say it's worth your subscription. And guys, it's free. Unlike your Disney Plus subscription, which you pay for Loki, you can get this great analysis, conversation, lively, chat for free. Just click the red button. That's all we're asking.
I'm gonna clip that and put that at the beginning of all my videos.
I'm just saying.
Pitch.